call this special, or this regular meeting of council Tuesday, May 28th to order. If you could please rise for the national anthem. I'll now ask if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest or and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor McClellan.
I do want a notice of motion.
Okay, well that'll just come at the end of the agenda, so that's fine. Okay, I'll ask the clerk to read the motion to move into closed session.
That council now move into closed session to discuss item under section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. One item, a potential disposition of land. Items under section 239(2)(f) of the Municipal Act 2001, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. 2, disposition of land matters. 2, agreement negotiation matters. An encroachment matter and a bylaw enforcement matter.
Okay, thank you. A mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Van Vliet, seconded by Councilor McClellan. All in favor? That's carried. We'll be back.
Okay, we're back in session here, and we'll do rise and report on our closed session.
Okay, council met in closed session and received 2 delegations regarding a disposition of land. Council provided direction to staff regarding 2 disposition of land matters, 1 encroachment matter and an agreement negotiation matter, all of which was done upon receiving advice from the township solicitor. We have 2 outstanding business items that will be dealt with later on in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We're moving into delegations now. We have 4 delegations this evening. The first one is Kim Groombridge from the Ministry of Environment, and after that will be Anthony Habjan, and I'll ask the CAO to speak to both of those, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The first 2 delegations this evening, we have the privilege of having the Ministry, the Environment, and members from the region of Niagara to speak to us regarding some water issues in the southern portion of the municipality. Back in 2017, the Ministry of the Environment first approached the municipality regarding these important matters. We subsequently met in 2018 prior to the election, and it was acknowledged after the presentations they made that it would be useful for council to get the same sort of presentation and information that staff got. So at this stage, we've got those representatives here today to provide you some information. So thank you very much for coming. Okay,
If you can approach the podium. And we'll try to keep it to 10 minutes. I'll let you know at the 10-minute mark, and you get an extra minute to shut it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Appreciate being invited here tonight. We were last here actually in 2015, so it's been a number of years, and so I thought tonight would be a good opportunity to give you an update on what's been done since that time. Am I advancing this or no? Thank you. So our real purpose here is to give you a bit of an overview of what the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, our involvement and our role in sewage and water compliance. And sorry, I neglected to invite, or sorry, to introduce our water compliance supervisor, Zafar Badi. He actually takes care of Hamilton, Niagara, and Brant for water and sewage compliance for municipalities. And he's here to help me answer any technical questions that might be here. So we also want to provide a compliance status for a number of septic systems that were referred over to us back before 2015 by the township following the find, fix, and repair approach that was initiated here. And we're actually, the core purpose here, and this is what we have met with the mayor previously and numerous iterations of staff, is to request that the township develop a plan to address the non-compliant septic systems that we've had to deal with. And certainly to offer support to the township as you consider what water and wastewater options going forward would be. So a lot of this isn't news to you. Starting in 2011 was when the township took the lead for Part 8 sewage systems under the building code, which are the smaller septic systems. And the find, fix, and repair strategy was what was put in place to deal with those that were located in the boil water advisory area. In 2014, as a result of that program, there was, these are numbers provided to me, but 1,126 private septic systems that were inspected by the consultant that was retained. I'm told there were over 200 that had some follow-up actions required by property owners. But what's significant to us is approximately 40 of those properties actually fell within our jurisdiction for a number of reasons that I'll outline. And I'm saying approximately because there was some back and forth even at that time where it appeared that a particular system would be in our jurisdiction, and then upon further review and gathering of information, it was pretty clear that, that it would go back under the building code jurisdiction. And just as a note, as again, you probably know, prior to 2011, that the building code, Part 8 of the building code was administered by the region, and only after 2011 was it taken on by the township. Thank you. So there are some limitations to doing visual septic system inspections. A lot of the defective systems it's actually occurring underground. It's not visible by simply looking at the system. Failing systems are not only those that have visible breakouts or surface ponding. Those are the obvious ones, but they're also defective if they're not properly treating at the subsurface. And they do have a lifespan, so a lot of the older systems may not be working anymore, and you won't know that without further testing. And under the building code, it's a bit of a limitation in that if a particular system wasn't permitted originally, there is the opportunity to grandfather those. So next slide. So wondering what our role in all of this is. Well, the larger septic systems are regulated under the Ontario Water Resources Act, and I think appropriately so, because a little bit more controls are necessary to ensure protection of the environment for those larger systems. Any systems that directly discharge to either surface water or require an application of sewage to land are also regulated by us. When I say large septic systems, it's typically what's over 10,000 liters a day. That's the norm for what we get involved in. What we've encountered here is because of the clause in OWRA that requires any, even of the smaller septic systems that either cross a property boundary or might be shared with a neighboring property, that kicks them into our jurisdiction. And we're not, our approval system isn't really set up to deal with those because we're a lot more rigorous in our reviews and approval requirements. And for instance, we don't have a grandfathering requirement, so a lot of these older systems that never had a permit under our legislation requires that they get an approval now. The hydrogeological work that would be necessary to get those approvals is quite extensive and rather unreasonable for individual property owners. One other part of our role is, if it's in the public interest, we do have to require municipalities take some action to manage sewage systems within their jurisdiction, and that's why we're here to talk to you today. So a bit of a summary of the inspections that we did. In total, there were 41. 26 of those private residences are technically under the Ontario Water Resources Act and do not have approval. We had 2 that decided to obtain an approval. They have holding tank approvals, which is far simpler than going for a subsurface sewage system. 5 of those residences either made changes or it was determined that they're actually under the building code and were given back to the municipality to follow up on. And there was 3 multiple cottages scenarios that were on one lot. 3 of those are very clearly under Ontario Water Resources Act. The last one did the calculations and determined that they were under 10,000 and would go back to the municipality. You can see there's a lot of ability to have some lack of equality on how these places could be treated. There's 2 golf courses also we found to be under the building code and a youth center as well. So each of these inspections, each of the sites that were inspected did receive a report from us as a basic conclusion that they would have to retain somebody to evaluate their system. Like I said earlier, it's almost impossible unless there's visual breakout to determine whether or not those systems are operating properly. And the options to come into compliance for those systems are varied. Each one has their own site-specific characteristics and considerations, and that's what would need to be considered in order to achieve compliance under our legislation. And there are multiple opportunities to either consider changes that could be made to put them back under the building code. Or again, there's an opportunity here for the township to look at the bigger picture and instead of site-specific issues and look towards a solution to the bigger issue. Not very clear pictures. So this actually shows all of the properties that we had inspected with the green dots along the lake shore. Go to the next one. So here's just an example. This is Beach Road West, and again, not that it's very clear, but most of those, or a number of those properties are determined to be under our legislation because their septic systems actually cross a private road and therefore fall under Ontario Water Resources Act requirements, where you can see some of their neighbors, because of the configuration of their system, are under Ontario Building Code, and it's just not consistent to require neighbors who live immediately beside each other to have to follow these two drastically different regimes. Next picture. And just an example of other issues that we encountered, in particular setback issues. A lot of the properties, because they're so small, simply don't have the space or the setbacks from their wells and from neighboring septic systems and wells as well in order to be able to even obtain approval from us. So we're not really here to come up with solutions, but looking at these, it's discouraging. Next slide. And also out there, I don't want to forget mentioning it, but there were a lot of well maintenance issues as well. It's not a priority as much right now because in order to address all of these well issues, it would cost a lot of money for these people, and it's already drawing from a contaminated aquifer. So I think the money's better spent elsewhere, but don't want to lose sight of that's an issue as well. Next slide. So you're looking at me wondering, well, what do you want? What does the government, what does the province want us to do? And again, I think there's a lot of opportunities here to look at options for proceeding. But in an official capacity, there is a provincial policy statement that outlines what could be done. And this policy statement is meant for new systems, but it's good guidance. And the number one policy statement is that municipal sewage and water services are the best form of service to ensure protection of residents. When that can't be provided, use of communal water and sewage services may also be allowed by municipalities. And if 1 and 2 aren't provided, then you can look at individual on-site systems, provided that there's no long-term or negative impacts as a result of that approach. And partial services can be permitted as well when it's necessary to address failed individual septic systems when you're, like in this circumstance where you have existing development. So there's a number of options there to consider. As far as a path forward goes, we do feel that the township has the best interests of their residents in mind. We, again, have been brought into this as a result of being provided these 40-ish properties that were considered to be under Ontario Water Resources Act, and because we don't have a grandfathering option, we're sort of compelled to seek a compliance resolution for those properties. We want a fair and consistent approach. I don't think, as I mentioned earlier, using a sledgehammer on one property owner and a little pat on the back on the next property is appropriate. Everybody should have the same requirements and the same positive outcome in the end. We're committed to work with the township. We're here to ask for you to develop a plan, but we're not going to hand that over and walk away. We spent a lot of time on this. We have a lot of information on these properties, and we're happy to meet. As I said, with the many previous staff members, we're happy to do that going forward as well. And finally, we do support the medical officer's health decision to maintain the boil water advisory until there is a solution in place. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Groombridge. Questions? Discussion by council? Councillor McClellan?
Mr. Mayor. You mentioned the contaminated aquifer. How bad is it?
Well, that would be a question for the region who did that assessment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Councillor Cridlin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the background. I think it's going to be good for us all going forward to work on this project together. On your slide at the beginning, you do just call it septic and water. Let's see, septic systems and wells compliance update. And I guess based on your presentation, it is primarily focused on septic systems as the priority going forward, and perhaps some of that work will then naturally perhaps help on the well situation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the ultimate plan to resolve the compliance issues that we've encountered could affect what approach would be necessary for those wells, so it's really cart before the horse.
So I'm going to just go for a little bit more clarification then, thank you. So again, our priority, I mean, we didn't have a well compliance issue before we started our septic work, I don't think. So this is again something new that we're adding on to the septic find fix work, I think.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I was here in 2015, and staff at that time were also raising the concern about issues with wells in the area.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just maybe one other area on your last comment about recommending that the boiled water be kept in place. In terms of jurisdiction, and again, your report's been very clear on that, do you have any jurisdiction at all to remove the boiled water advisory?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is not our jurisdiction. We support the decision of the medical officer of health in that aspect, but it is not our role to remove or maintain it. We just support that decision.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. We have 3 more presentations, so what we'll do is we'll go through all 4 presentations and receive them at the end, all in one motion. So thank you very much, Ms. Groombridge. Thank you. Okay, we're now looking for Anthony Habjan and Siobhan Kearns, please.
Hi, yes, I'm Siobhan Kearns. Thank you for welcoming me. Anthony had a medical emergency, a family emergency, so he's unable to join us today. But I'm pleased to come and speak to you about the Wainfleet Long Beach Community Boil Water Advisory, and I want to thank Councillor Gridlin for calling today. She had some questions, and I think it was good, kind of brought things to front of my mind, so I appreciate that. So we are here in tandem with the Ministry of the Environment. Again, their role focuses on the sewage disposal, and our role at Public Health is the potability of the groundwater drinking water. So that's our role here. So thank you. Just a little bit of overview to how we came to be here, how we came to issue the Boil Water Advisory. So again, the Wainfleet Long Beach community, has a permanent, so this is circa 2006. At the time, a permanent population of 2,500. Excuse me. Now, seasonal, we'd said, and that's something the councillor and I had a chat about. I think that number would have come from, business improvement area, kind of the number of people throughout the year that would be, coming through. Maybe they wouldn't all be drinking the water while they were here, but I think it was just kind of an overview that seasonally in the summer it got busier. So, 90 years ago when it started as a small beachfront community, and, it has evolved from that into a year-round residential area. And development was unplanned, therefore utilities and sanitation systems were not built along with the development. So specifically, the community is overdeveloped for relying on private water, so wells, and wastewater septic tank systems. Numerous detailed studies, which I will share, were undertaken between 2001 and 2006. So we were involved in this way back at the beginning of 2000. And the clear conclusion was that the community needs drinking water and wastewater services And again, much like Kim shared with you, we are committed to working with the township in whatever way we can to facilitate whatever solutions that you can find. So in the governance for the standards regarding private water sewage transferred from the Environmental Protection Act to the Ontario Building Code in 1998 and was delegated to municipalities. However, during that time, up until the early 2000s, Niagara Region Public Health, who used to provide the service, provided the service to the Township of Wainfleet on a cost recovery basis. In 2001, excuse me, Wainfleet Township asked Public Health to conduct a sanitary survey. Some of this may be redundant with Kim's presentation, I apologize for that. And the focus at the time was on environmental and public health safety concerns. So there were 286 lots that were inspected, and of that, 246, so 86%, showed demonstrable and suspected sewage disposal malfunction. In 2002, Public Works engaged a consulting company called MacViro to assess the groundwater quality and the conditions of septic systems across the lakeshore area outside of Long Beach. So there were three studies that were conducted between 2002 and 2005. The study found, one of the studies, excuse me, found that bedrock at very shallow depths and only had a thin layer of soil cover. This impacts on the ability of sewage systems to protect and provide a barrier from the leaching into the groundwater aquifer. And in addition, many lots were found to be too small to allow for sufficient dilution of septic systems. But I just do want to share that, let's fast forward to 2016 to 2018. Sorry, and I'm sorry that this is fuzzy. Niagara Region Public Health receives all adverse sample results from private well water testing conducted in the region. So anybody at home who takes a sample of their well water, if there's an adverse result, the lab sends it to us. We in turn then reach out to the residents who have adverse water samples to advise them of remedial action, alert them not to drink the water, depending what the water sample results are. So we do that as a common service. So from the slide, this shows water sample, so there were 400 water sample results taken by private citizens between 2016 and 2018. And the circles indicate where we found adverse results. So that could be E. coli, that could be total coliform. And so in total, there were 400 samples taken, and of those, 140, 35% were adverse results. So just kind of in summary, under the Municipal Act, the region has exclusive jurisdiction over water production, treatment, and storage, but shares jurisdiction with Wainfleet Township over water and sewage works. Jointly, they can establish the necessary infrastructure. However, they could be forced to do so in one of two ways: through an order by the Medical Officer of Health, or the province may direct a municipality through the Ontario Water Resources Act to establish waterworks or sewage works when deemed necessary. So in conclusion, at that time and at this time, neither Niagara Region Public Health nor the Ontario government has opted to force a resolution, instead choosing to let the Wainfleet Township address the matter within their jurisdiction, but with a boil water advisory issued to protect the health of the people in Long Beach. So we issued the boil water advisory on April 10th, 2006, and it continues to remain in place today. So, happy to answer any and all questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kearns. Any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for the
Thank you very
presentation.
much.
Our next presenter is David Hayworth, the official plan policy consultant for Niagara Region. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And yeah, 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public. I'm very pleased to come and speak to our municipal partner today about the region's new official plan. Basically, we're doing a new official plan that is more user-friendly and concise, implements provincial policy, reflects current goals and priorities of community and regional council, and provides clear direction for local planning with flexibility where appropriate. And I will say that back when the regional policy plan was approved in the early 70s, and it's over time become an official plan, the regional mandate was mainly preserving agricultural lands and defining an urban boundary. Over time, planning's become more comprehensive and complex, and there's been more provincial downloading of planning responsibilities, growth management in particular. So while there have been amendments to the existing regional plan, they've been amending that old platform, the old policy planning platform. So we want to create a new, more contemporary platform to address the planning responsibilities we have. This slide basically shows the process to date that's occurred. And we're, in March, we just had Regional Council approved a consultation framework timeline. So while you've probably heard in the past of Niagara 2041, how we grow, how we go, and how we flow. So how we go resulted in the Transportation Master Plan, and how we flow resulted in the region's Water and Wastewater Master Plan. And both of those will be important documents to inform the new official plan. So that work has substantially been, well, it is completed. So our other priority background studies result around growth management and rural and natural systems, which you can see the 4 background studies under each of those topics, and I'll be talking a little bit more of those further. Basically, the process timeline for the creation of the official plan is set out in this slide. We're going to have consultation at each stage of the background studies. We're going to have consultation as each section of the official plan is developed. And then when we combine the sections into a consolidated draft early in 2021, we're going to have further consultation, and there'll be about a year to revise and back and forth to refine the document before regional council would approve it, and it would go to the province for approval. So I'll talk about the priority background studies, the land budget or land needs assessment. We want to determine the amount of land needed for residential and employment growth to 2041. And we want a process to address urban expansions. Under the old growth plan, urban expansions had to be dealt with comprehensively through the Municipal Comprehensive Review or the new official plan. The new growth plan has come out, so there's a window of opportunity for the possibility of urban boundaries being assessed ahead of the new official plan under certain circumstances, as well as rounding out of hamlet boundaries, etc. We want to develop an urban structure which identifies strategic areas for growth and intensification throughout the region. And these would be planned through the secondary plan process. And these strategic areas would take advantage of public transit, infrastructure, and community facilities. And by doing so, they basically help protect established neighborhoods by strategically concentrating growth in certain areas. And a draft urban structure components, this is a little hard to read, but we have an urban growth center, which is identified by the province as downtown St. Catharines, regional centers, which can be downtown Welland, downtown Niagara Falls. our 4 GO transit station areas, which you've probably heard secondary plans have been prepared for. Other strategic growth areas, which could include the Brock District Plan, the Glendale District Plan of White Oaks, and the mall. And then local municipalities are free to identify their local centers and local corridors as well. Under employment land strategy, we have to identify and protect a sufficient and marketable supply of land for employment uses. And employment areas identified in partnership with our local municipalities. We've been working with area planners. Employment areas identified in the regional plan are protected from conversion. You'd actually need a regional policy plan amendment to convert them to other uses. The growth management housing strategy, we want to plan for an appropriate range and mix of housing forms to provide choice, affordable options, and aging in place. We'll align with the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan, and basically we have to establish affordable housing targets across the region and establish policy tools to help us achieve affordable housing. In order to help us with that, we've developed a housing database. We hired a consulting firm to identify what the core housing needs are for affordable housing. That information has been shared with area planners, and that has either just been or will be shortly shared with the local councils for review. So I'll talk about the rural and natural systems quickly. For agriculture, we feel our policies are quite comprehensive and contemporary, but we want to do a conformity exercise. There's been changes with provincial policy, and we want to make sure we're in conformity across the board there. Under natural environment, Sean Norman, my colleague, will be coming up and doing a presentation on the natural environment background study, so I'll basically skip over that, other than to say it's a very important background study for the official plan, because basically the protection of natural areas helps define where we can grow. Rural and natural systems, aggregate resources. Under Imagine Niagara a few years ago, we started to look at aggregates, and state of aggregates in Niagara region background report was prepared. And then in the spring, we did 2018, we did a technical addendum because of the changes in provincial policies in 2017. So we wanted to update that background report. So that's been done, and we're currently at the stage of starting to draft policies, which we'll be able to share, and hopefully by, I would think, the fall. Under rural and natural systems climate change, this is an important component of the official plan, and a very complex one because so many factors influence climate change. So this slide basically illustrates the different components of the official plan that will affect climate change. And we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our communities and better adapt to the effects of climate change. So in terms of consultation, I mentioned a consultation timeline framework. Back when Imagine Niagara was done, there was over 4,000 survey results received, and approximately 3,000 comments, and basically from across the region in all municipalities, where they helped identify the important themes, which are in the triangles there, and we have some more detailed information on each theme. Those themes were, I would say, verified in a sense through Shape Niagara, which was a recent process the region undertook to receive what's important to Niagara residents. So now when we go out to the residents, we know what's the important themes, and we have some information on those, and that's helping us coordinate the public information sessions and workshops. And when we go to the public now, we want to have something of substance for them to comment on. So we are going to have some public information sessions in the fall, And Sean will be talking about, he has 2 public information sessions coming up for the natural environment background study. We're also just updated the region's website for the new official plan as well, where people can go and receive information.
Mr. Hayworth, if you could wrap up in about 2 minutes,
Yep,
please.
no problem. So this is our public consultation timeline. Again, the background studies in 2019, draft policies in the fall of 2020 on different sections, and the consolidated draft in 2021. And these are our next steps and considerations. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the councillors? No questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we'll look forward to Sean Norman, Senior Planner, Niagara Region, overview of work underway regarding the new regional official plan. And you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Sean Norman, and I'm a Senior Planner in Community and Long-Range Planning at Niagara Region. I'm here this evening to provide you a brief overview of the Natural Environment Work Program that is being undertaken in support of the new Niagara Official Plan, as well as to provide a summary of some of the key findings of the background study that is being completed. Before I go into detail on the scope of the work, I would like to briefly present some of the reasons why natural environment planning is such an important component of the new Niagara Official Plan. Firstly, natural environment planning supports the identification of areas for growth and development. For example, at a regional level, it helps identify where new growth areas should be. Secondly, there is a range of provincial requirements that must be understood and implemented by the region. The third bullet point refers to the important ecosystem level role that natural systems play in our daily lives. As you know, agriculture, tourism, and other industries in Niagara rely on clean water and air for their success. Natural environment planning supports the vitality of these industries by ensuring that there is a healthy natural environment for the long term. Fourthly, there is a link between the natural environment and human health, both physical and mental. Natural environment planning ensures that green spaces required for the well-being of Niagara residents will be available for generations to come. Finally, planning for climate change will be a common theme throughout the new official plan and will be addressed in each one of our work plans. We will be striving to better understand the connection between natural environment planning and climate change. The definition of natural environment can mean something different to everyone. To ensure the scope of the work program would be well understood, we attempted to clearly define it as an early step in the project. In scope includes all of the environmental features and environmental systems as generally defined by the province. Some of the identified topics are very extensive. For example, natural heritage features includes woodlands, wetlands, habitat, valley lands, areas of natural and scientific interest, and more. What is being presented on this slide is an overview of the key phases of the work program. The processes being undertaken is generally the same as would be used for any other planning or scientific study. Information is collected, options are developed and analyzed, and an implementation plan is created for the preferred option. In addition, there are a number of major points of engagement that will be used to inform the technical aspects of the project. As highlighted, we are currently on phase 3 and are striving to inform and educate our stakeholders and partners on some of the key topics and issues related to natural environment planning in the region. At this stage, we have not developed options for evaluation and have yet to prepare draft policies. That work will be done in later phases in the project. The Natural Environment Background Study, in addition to discussion papers on mapping and watershed planning, will form the basis of the project moving forward. Their purpose is to ensure that the policy development will be informed by science and the best available information. The scope of the background study was prepared in consultation with planning staff at each municipality and covers both general topics as well as issues and trends that are specific to Niagara. Several of the key topics will be overviewed in the next few slides. Much of the direction for natural environment planning is provided by the province. Provincial direction starts with the provincial policy statement. The PPS identifies the types of natural features, areas, functions, and systems that must be identified and protected. In some areas, the province has identified more detailed natural heritage systems and policies. In Niagara, we are responsible for implementing the Provincial Greenbelt Natural Heritage System and the Provincial Growth Plan Natural Heritage System. The Greenbelt NHS has been in place for a number of years and is generally reflected in existing regional policies. The Growth Plan NHS is new and is being implemented in the new Niagara official plan for the first time. Finally, the province provides a number of guidelines and other tools to support municipalities. These include, for example, the Natural Heritage Reference Manual and Greenbelt Technical Paper. As the two primary land uses in the rural areas of the region, it is critical to develop natural environment and agricultural systems which are compatible with one another. Provincial direction and existing regional policies are generally clear that natural heritage policies are not intended to restrict agricultural operations. For example, Policy 2.1.9 of the PPS provides specific direction that natural heritage policies of the PPS are not intended to limit the ability of agricultural uses to continue. Further, there are many exemptions in both the Greenbelt and Growth Plan NHS policies related to agricultural buildings and structures. Finally, there is a common misconception that where a buffer is required between a new agricultural building and a natural feature, that it must be natural vegetation. In fact, both the Greenbelt Plan and Growth Plan include exemptions that state when the lands will continue to be used for agricultural purposes, there is not a requirement for natural self-sustaining vegetation. Buffers in agricultural areas may continue to be planted with crops. Woodlands and other treed areas are often the most publicly valued components of a natural system. When considering woodlands to be protected through policy, it is significant woodlands which are considered to be key features. It is the responsibility of municipalities to identify and map significant woodlands, which is generally done through a two-step process. First, woodlands are identified and mapped based on defined criteria. Second, criteria are developed and applied to determine significance. Criteria can, for example, include proximity to other natural features and the size of a woodland. Within provincial NHSs, provincial policy for the protection of significant woodlands are to be used. Outside of provincial NHSs, municipalities are responsible for developing policies, which must be in conformance with the PPS. A related tool for the management and protection of trees and woodlands are local and regional tree bylaws. The Municipal Act sets out clear parameters of what may be permitted in a regional bylaw and what may be permitted in a local tree bylaw. Outside of the new Niagara official plan, the region has recently initiated an update to the Regional Tree and Forest Conservation Bylaw. Following completion of the new official plan, there would be a process to ensure proper alignment between these two tools. Climate change and invasive species are recognized as two of the most significant threats to the natural environment and can often work in conjunction to accelerate the deterioration of our natural areas. With respect to the relationship between natural environment and climate change, this generally means two things: planning to protect our natural areas from the impacts of climate change, and understanding that natural areas are an important tool for mitigation and resilience. For example, natural areas such as floodplains and wetlands can help mitigate the impacts of large storm events by storing stormwater, encouraging infiltration, and releasing it at more reasonable rates. There are many invasive species that are creating issues in Niagara, including Phragmites, garlic mustard, European buckthorn, and emerald ash borer. Directly controlling invasive species is difficult through the land use policies of official plans alone, and is typically better addressed through bylaws and other management tools. However, consideration needs to be given to how we classify woodlands and other areas that are in transition as a result of the impacts of climate change and invasive species. Watersheds are defined as an area that is drained by a river and its tributaries. The PPS requires that watersheds be the ecologically meaningful scale of integrated and long-term planning. Watershed planning provides a framework for the protection of water resources and the management of human and natural resources at a watershed scale. It is not a new concept. However, recent provincial changes have reinforced the need for watershed planning to inform land use planning. The region will now have a lead role in coordinating watershed planning. A high priority discussion paper is being completed to better inform the updated process, roles, and responsibilities related to watershed planning moving forward. In addition to presentations to all the local councils, we are also consulting with the public and other stakeholders. Following this process, we will be reporting back to Regional Council with everything that we have heard. The next steps are to complete this first point of engagement and to finalize the background study and high priority discussion papers. Based on all the input we receive, we will begin to develop and evaluate various options for how natural systems and policies in the region could be developed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Lots of good information in there. Thank you. Any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. So for these 4 reports, can I have a mover to move all 4 reports to receive? Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor McClellan, all in favor to receive them, and that is passed. Okay, we'll move on to our mayor's remarks. I attended the Ontario Association of Police Services Board Spring Conference and AGM last week in Windsor. It was very good, insightful, a lot of new information there on the new police act that's going to be coming into being probably next year. I'd like to thank those who attended the Mayor's Update Breakfast this morning at Jericho House. That was a very good session. Mayor Steele and myself updated the chamber people on what is coming up in the next couple of years in each of our cities. The next Niagara Police Services Board meeting will be right here on Thursday morning at 8:30. Questions from the public are permitted at this meeting, and we hope that you'll join us. So it is a good chance for citizens to be able to come in and speak to the police, the management of the police, and to ask questions and determine what's going on in Wainfleet in the future. I'll be attending a ribbon cutting ceremony at the Open Arms Mission Ministry campus on Forks Road. I think that's this Saturday. They are celebrating the addition of a large walk-in freezer, which will help them better serve our community. There will also be a special meeting of council held on Wednesday, June 5th at 1 p.m. with James Lockery regarding meeting procedures. James Lockery is a certified parliamentarian of Canada, and we are going to be making some changes in the way that we do our procedures here and making it more user-friendly, I'll say that. And we're going to have a session with this fellow who has actually written the book on it, and so that's going to be coming soon. We'll hold a ceremony on June 6th, 10 a.m. to officially unveil our new sign marking Dayball Lane off Side Road 20, just over here. And Regional Council will meet next on Thursday, June the 6th. Our next regular meeting of council will be held Tuesday, June the 11th. And the farmers market at Meridian will not be running this Thursday due to the anticipated poor weather forecast. However, response has been excellent, and we expect the market may be moving to a larger venue to accommodate this increased interest. Stay tuned. We're hoping our market grows over the next few years and becomes a very viable farmers market. So that's it for my comments. Okay, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. Any discussion, any questions on those minutes? Okay, seeing none, can I have a mover for those? Councillor Van Vliet, a seconder. Councillor Cridlin, all in favor of accepting those minutes, and that is approved. Okay, moving on to administrative staff reports. The first one is on our 2019 property tax rates. I would like the treasurer to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the staff report before you tonight is to establish the 2019 tax rates for the Township of Wainfleet. As you recall, our budget was approved in April, and these tax rates are based on the approved budget of $5.9 million. Just want to remind everyone that included in our tax bill are three distinct components, the first being the township's tax rate, the second being the regional tax rates, and the last piece being the educational tax rates. So the municipality is responsible for collecting not only our taxes, but also the taxes to be levied on behalf of the region and the Ministry of Education.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, ask that to be received, please. A mover for that. Yep, sorry, I'll read the motion. That ASR 013-2019 be received, and that council consider the bylaw attached to this report as Appendix A to provide the final property tax rates for the 2019 taxation year at the May 28th, 2019 regular meeting of council. Mover for that, Councillor McClellan, seconder, Councillor Gilmore, all in favor, and that is approved. Okay, the next administrative staff report is the animal control contract renewal. Are there any questions on that? Okay, seeing none. The recommendation is that ASR 014-2019 report be received for information, and that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to renew an agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet and the Welland and District Humane Society for Animal Control and Humane Services. A mover for that, please. Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor Van Vliet, all in favor, and that is carried. The next building staff report, and any discussions, comments on that? Seeing none, a recommendation is that BSR 010-2019 be received for information. A mover, Councillor Cridlin, seconder. Councillor McClellan, any other discussion? Seeing none. And all in favor? And that is approved. Okay, moving on to the bylaw enforcement staff report. Would our bylaw officer like to speak to that, please?
Thank you, Mayor Gibson, through you to the rest of the council. This report, excuse me, is a report. As you know, you approved the non-parking AMPS bylaw back on April 9th. And in that report, it stated that in order for enforcement practices to take place, that short form wording for all applicable bylaws that were designated in the non-parking AMPS bylaw be brought forward. So this report is just stating what those bylaws are, and then each appendix will have amending each bylaw to include an AMPS portion plus a short form wording for those bylaws.
Okay, any questions or discussions? I have one. When will this come into being, do you think, once it's all been processed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If council decides on it, June 11th is the voting date for it.
Okay, and how long to implement after that? We'll need forms, we'll need paperwork, and...
June 12th.
Excellent. Councillor Cridlin, you had a question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our bylaw officer. There's one in here about a list of nuisances. I just have to find it. Let's see. And we have listed a few nuisances, of which there's a $300 fine. Is it appropriate to add one, or is that a different process? Would we have to come forward to maybe add one that might be missed? Thank you.
Let's see. So you're saying, Don, Councillor Crillon, that you would like another one added that you think we've missed? Okay, bylaw officer, can you speak to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The short form wording for this bylaw was actually approved by the Attorney General. So we have short form wording under the Provincial Offences Act. And this is a short form wording. If council wishes to add another one, we can. That one would only be able to be enforced under AMPS, not the Provincial Offences Act, because it was not approved.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our bylaw, that's a little bit of encouragement. So there's one, all of our porta potties that are out there tipping over. Could we put that one in there under the category that you're suggesting then? I think it would be under nuisance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can add that. I don't know if Richard has anything, I don't know if he'd like to address anything under the contract that he has for those being installed. But if not, we can add something in that nuisance bylaw.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as indicated by the bylaw officer, we can make amendments to the bylaw to add that as an additional category, if you will, of nuisance. And we can draft up some wording and bring that back on June 11th for your consideration. And if you are okay with it, later in the meeting, you'll be able to approve that bylaw in conjunction with what you see before you tonight. And if you're not okay with it, then we can pass sort of what you see before you tonight, and we'll deal with that nuisance further elsewhere.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, so the recommendation is that BSR 011-2019 be received and that council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaws that provide for the short form wording and administrative penalties for municipal bylaws attached as appendices for consideration at the June 11th, 2019 council meeting. A mover for that, please. Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor Van Vliet, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, and next is the bylaw enforcement statistical report. Would you care to speak to that? Nothing to speak to there. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, recommendation BSR 012-2019 be received. Can mover for that, please? Councillor Cridlin, seconder. Councillor McClellan, all in favor, and that is carried. And another one by our bylaw officer, bylaw enforcement statistical report for April. I guess nothing to speak to there. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, recommendation BSR 013-2019 be received. Mover for that, please. Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor McClellan, all in favor, and that is carried. Okay, we have a memo now we're looking to receive for information. It's from our bylaw officer, appointment of municipal weed inspector. Do you wish to speak to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the rest of council. Every year, myself and the previous drainage superintendent attended an annual weed inspectors conference that gives us certification to enforce the Weed Control Act. This year, the new drainage superintendent attended that with me this year. So this report is just repealing the old bylaw and bringing forward a new bylaw to appoint myself and the new drainage superintendent as weed inspectors for the township.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, mover for that, please. Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Gilmore, all in favor, and that is carried. And moving on to our drainage staff report. Mr. Jemison, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I get the second slide there, please? So just a bit of background. So the Bridgewater Drain area that we kind of see here is the main intersection there is Regional Road 24 and Regional Road 27. The original Bridgewater Drain is shown in blue, and it's about 702 meters in length. It was originally completed in the report in 1961, and it's a little out of date. Kind of skipping over in green there, we have the Bridgewater Outlet Drain, which was completed in 2016. It was brought on as a petition drain in 2011. Council approved that, and it was about 702 meters. The middle portion is kind of why we're here tonight, and it's shown in orange, and that's a natural water course. So roughly 1,200 meters long. We can't enforce any maintenance on it. We don't have any authority to go onto the private property, and as such, any of the maintenance that is completed upstream on the Bridgewater Drain isn't very effective. So the report that I provided recommends a Section 78 report for the Bridgewater Drain, the original blue portion there, which would allow for the drain to be improved and extended to sufficient outlet. Section 78 also allows for the consolidation of 2 or more drainage works. So we would be looking to combine that original Bridgewater Drain through the natural water course out to the Bridgewater Outlet. And then that would also update our assessment schedules and help us out with that. So extending the Bridgewater Drain and the consolidation would allow for improved maintenance because we would have a better picture with it. It would allow for more equitable billing and would allow for just single applications to the Ministry of Agriculture for our grants and to all the regulatory agencies for our maintenance permits.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Recommendation that DSR 006-2019 be received, and that council appoints Spreet Associates for the preparation of Section 78 Engineers Report under the Drainage Act for the Bridgewater Drain. A mover for that, please. Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Gilmore, all in favor, please. And that is carried. Okay, we're going to move on to correspondence now. And speak to number 98, received from South Niagara Chamber of Commerce regarding the SNC Golf Tournament lunch sponsorship request in the amount of $350. Would we like to have discussion on that, please? Whether we're going to spend $350 on this golf tournament. It's basically a donation. Any discussion? Any opposition to it? Councillor McCollum?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering where we stand on our donations so far this year. We kind of set a limit for ourselves.
Look to our treasurer for that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McClellan. So as you recall, during your budget deliberations, you approved $2,700 in kind of discretionary funds for this. You still have essentially the full $2,700 at your disposal.
Thank you.
In previous years, has anybody from Wainfleet put in a team from here in the office or anywhere? Do we know? Is it so? Basically, we're authorizing whether we spend $350 to support this Southern Region Golf Tournament. Any other discussion? Any motions on that? Okay, seeing none. No discussion, eh? Councillor Van Vliet, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we maybe go down a sponsor to just a T sponsor for $125, or?
It's totally up to us. They've asked us for $350. Nobody here is involved in this. If we want to lower the amount that we donate to them, that's totally our decision here this evening. So from 0 to 350, anywhere in between. So
Do we know, Terry, did we do anything last year?
Through the mayor, I certainly didn't go. I'm not sure that we did or didn't. I think we have in the past. Personally, I think the money is better spent elsewhere.
I would agree with Terry on that one.
Any other discussion on that? Our $350 is probably better spent here in Wainfleet. Okay, so we'll just receive that for information then? Okay, may I have a mover for that, please? Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Cridlin, all in favor, and that is carried. The next item in correspondence is received from the Niagara Health System Addiction Services request for proclamation of July 28th, 2019 as Hepatitis Awareness Day in Wainfleet. And is there any discussion on that? Did I skip one? 113.
B. He did.
Just a minute, we're just out of order here on my sheet, so give me a minute, please. Okay, got that figured out. C-111-2019 received from the Parachute request for proclamation of June 3rd to June 19th, 2019 as Parachute Safe Kids Week. Any discussion? Councillor Cridlin?
No, I was going to just move to a motion, so I better wait for that to close off for the discussion, sorry. All right, so we're ready for a motion then? Sorry, just move that we approve that, that request.
Okay, do we have a seconder on that? Councillor Van Vliet? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, next piece of correspondence received from Niagara Health System Addiction Services regarding requests for proclamation of July 28th, 2019 as Hepatitis Awareness Day in Wainfleet. Any discussion on that? Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd move that we grant that request.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, so that's moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor McClellan. All in favor, and that is carried. Okay, next, quite a lot of correspondence here, and I had a piece out, I put it out of order and it got me all mixed up, so my fault. C-123, 2019, received from Pride Niagara regarding a request for proclamation of June 1st to June 8th, 2019 as Niagara Region Pride Week and request to raise the rainbow flag Monday, June 2nd, 2019 at 10:45 here at our council. Any discussion? Councillor Van Vliet.
I would make a motion that we go ahead and do that.
Okay, any other discussion? Have a seconder on that? Councillor McClellan, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, and received from Ken Stazer requesting approval from council as per fireworks bylaw. And any discussion on that? Seeing none. Councillor Van
To you,
Vliet.
Mr. Mayor, when does this take place and why? I see them from my house, I'm just wondering.
The documentation is, this is the 5th year for this event. They're not aware of any existing bylaw regarding fireworks. It was brought to their attention by Deputy Chief Shaw. I hope this event can continue with your approval. And I can't hear you. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this event is a private, personal event for friends and family, and he's been doing it for several years, and I don't know the exact history, but it was brought to his attention that he can't be setting personal fireworks outside of the days listed in the bylaw. So he had asked for a permit, and low hazard or consumer grade fireworks don't require a permit, but they're also prohibited to be set off during those days. So that's where he could apply to the council for an exemption to set them off on June 15th.
Thank you. So
Okay, I'm seeing the date here, June 15th, between 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. Finally, I found it here on the document,
So can I make a motion that we go ahead and approve that he can do that?
yes, you can.
I would like to
You
do
want a
that.
seconder on that?
I enjoy watching them.
Councillor Gilmore. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. And we have, okay, Councillor Cridler, would you wish to lift one of them?
Thank you, Mayor. There's correspondence number 102. It's to do with littering, and two things, and maybe Mr. Nan can just help me out. It appears that they're looking for also community support perhaps on this, and so even if we can just highlight it, I'd shout out to the two people on social media that did a great cleanup, Ian and Jade, and it looks like there's an appetite for the public to pitch in, no pun intended, on helping us pick up. So maybe we could put something on the website or the Facebook that captures the essence of that. If I could get somebody to support that.
Okay, go ahead, CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can do that as, from a staff perspective. We'll just proceed and put that up.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. Okay, I think I'm at bylaws here. My paperwork got all messed up and it creates all sorts of problems. We have a bylaw. Meredith, are you reading that? Please, thank you.
That bylaw number 34, 2019, being a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw 18, 2018, being a bylaw to appoint a weed inspector for the Township of Wainfleet, be read and passed this 28th day of May, 2019.
Any questions, discussion? Mover, Councillor McClellan, seconder, Councillor Gilmore, all in favor, and that is carried. And we're now moving to notices of motion. And Councillor Cridlin has brought forward a notice of motion. Would you like to speak to that? And there is a conflict here. You'll see Councillor McClellan leaving due to that conflict. So could you speak to that, please, your motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. My understanding is I just read this now through the clerk. And I want to acknowledge all the staff support in getting this first motion to where it's in black and white. So thank you to that. Whereas there are concerned citizens in Wainfleet regarding a quarry remediation project in our neighboring community of Port Colborne, and whereas both news and social media sources are covering this project and identifying concerns that the aquifer may be at risk now or in the future, And whereas this quarry remediation project lies within the jurisdiction of the city of Port Colborne, and whereas it is timely that Wainfleet therefore examine what is within its jurisdiction in the area of governance that would help protect our water and environment, which would include a site alteration bylaw and fill bylaw for the Township of Wainfleet. And whereas council recognized that staff have already begun these initiatives, now therefore be it resolved that the council of the Corporation of Township of Wainfleet support the protection of our water and environment, which will continue as a council priority, and that the citizens of Wainfleet are provided an opportunity for engagement as part of the bylaw development process, and that Wainfleet Council encourage the Council of the City of Port Colborne and the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to continue to follow proper protocol on such projects and take consideration of potential impacts to neighboring municipalities.
Discussion. A seconder on that? Councillor Van Vliet, thank you. And discussion? Councillor Van Vliet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a little bit of a problem with the wording of council priority. So I feel like that would bump things up and take priority over everything. So could we adjust that wording?
Sure. Yeah, I'm open to making it better.
Well,
maybe something like as a priority, as one of our many. Yeah.
Anything else on that, Councillor Van Vliet?
Yeah, and I'm just like, should we wait for Port Colborne to make any kind of decision on this, or are you at it?
It's up to council.
Okay.
It's just going to sit there.
All right.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, the wording uses as a priority, so that would infer one of many. And it doesn't really have anything to do with Port Colborne. We're concerned about Wainfleet. So personally, I don't see a problem because it doesn't delineate that it's the only priority. So I think it's, my opinion, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just putting it out there what I was asked by residents. So I'm okay with your motion, just that wording we need to tweak a little bit.
Okay, and I'll speak to it. I actually, when I read through it, I thought it was a good motion, but I also had a problem with the end of that sentence, which will continue as a council priority. I don't know if that puts us into a bit of a corner in some senses. Who knows down the road how that could go? I looked at that, and it's a good motion, but I would just take that right out of there, which will continue as a council priority, and just leave it as Township of Wainfleet support the protection of our water and our environment, which falls within our green plan anyway, and as a gentleman spoke tonight about the region and that sort of thing. So I would like to see that struck, which will continue as a council priority. When that's done, I don't have a problem with any of it. I think it's really well worded. What do you think to that, Councillor Van Vliet?
Yeah, that's great. I agree.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree to take it out.
Okay, so is that amendment good? Can we have a mover?
That's a friendly amendment, yes, thank you.
We do a friendly on that? Let's have a mover on that for the amendment. Councillor Van Vliet, a seconder. Councillor Gilmore, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. That's the amendment. And now we'll have the motion is made. We'll have a move. It's already been moved, right? And so now we have a vote on it. Everybody in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, is there any other business? Councillor Van Vliet has business.
I did, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let everybody know that this Saturday, June 1st, at the Long Beach Golf Course is the Walter Lumsden Memorial Scholarship Tournament. There's still openings. If anybody wants to play or interested in donating anything, give the course a call.
Okay, thank you. Any other business? Councillor Quidlin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. On a different note, these books are out, so please pick your book up. And I also got to attend a course. It was at OMAFRA, and it was an excellent beginner's course on community economic development. It was targeted for rural, but there's actually another course that targets just agriculture, so I will look to be able to attend that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other business? Okay, seeing none, I will have a motion now to move into closed session. Have a motion on that, please, Councillor? Okay, it's going to get read here.
The council now move into closed session to discuss item under section 2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals. One item, by law enforcement matter. Item under section 2F, advice subject to solicitor-client privilege. Item under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. One item, consideration of applications to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Board. Item under section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001, labor relations or employee negotiations. One item, human resources matter, and minutes of the closed meeting of council held May 8th, 2019.
Have a mover for that, please. Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Gilmore, all in favor. That's carried. We'll move into closed session. Thank you.